We need hungrier talent, Nicholas, individuals who can consistently meet higher targets. Quentin Shaw explained, his voice devoid of warmth as he slid the early retirement package papers across the polished, sterile conference table. The weight of the glossy folder felt heavier than it looked. The company is moving in a new direction, focusing on optimization and efficiency. He leaned back in his expensive chair, a picture of detached corporate authority. Marcus Thorne, our CEO, stared out the window, seemingly fascinated by the St. Louis skyline, avoiding my gaze. He knew what this was. My name is Nicholas Vance, 48 years old. For 11 years, I've been a senior relationship manager at Nova Financial Solutions, or NFS, right here in St. Louis, Missouri. I joined back when it was still Pioneer Trust and Investment, a smaller, regional firm with ambition. I'd poured more than a decade of my life into this place, painstakingly building a client portfolio from the ground up. These weren't just accounts, they were relationships forged through late nights, endless travel, and a foundation of unwavering trust. My clients accounted for nearly 35% of the company's total revenue, roughly $10.5 million annually. No shortcuts, just sheer hard work and dedication. I managed a tight, controlled smile, my throat suddenly dry. "Thank you for the opportunity, Quentin, Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. I stood up, gathered the papers, and walked out without a single word of argument. What was there to say? Quentin Shaw had arrived 6 months ago, parachuted in as the new senior vice president of sales and strategy. Marcus had brought him in, supposedly to reinvigorate the team, or so the internal memo claimed. Quentin favored impeccably tailored designer suits, spoke fluent corporate buzzwords, and possessed an unnerving ability to discuss people as if they were assets on a balance sheet. He had never once bothered to join me on a client call, not even with my largest accounts. Within 3 weeks of his arrival, he'd implemented a radical customer segmentation plan and a new, complex commission structure heavily skewed towards new acquisitions. Despite my consistently strong performance and deepening relationships with existing major clients, my earnings were slashed by nearly 20%. "We need hunters, Nicholas, not just farmers," he declared in that first team meeting, his eyes sweeping over me with dismissive appraisal. The signs, subtle at first, had been there all along, hadn't they? My spacious office, earned through years of exceeding targets, had been reallocated to a smaller corner space during recent renovations. My name started disappearing from key strategy meeting invites, replaced by younger faces Quentin favored. Just yesterday, I'd returned from lunch to find IT personnel unexpectedly servicing my computer, their explanations vague and unconvincing. Small things, easily dismissed individually, perhaps. But together, they painted a picture, a slow, creeping realization that something like this was inevitable. Death by 1,000 cuts. Now, standing in my suddenly cramped corner office, I packed 11 years of my professional life into a single, standard-issue cardboard box. Family photos, Claire and I smiling, the kids younger and carefree. A coffee mug my daughter had painted for Father's Day years ago, chipped but cherished. And tucked away, a separate folder containing detailed client contact information, personal notes, birthdays, family details, the kind of intelligence built over years of genuine connection, distinct from the official CRM database. It wasn't subterfuge. It was just habit, the way I worked. "Need a hand with that, Nicholas?" Brenda from accounting poked her head around the doorframe, her expression genuinely bewildered. She'd been with Pioneer, then NFS, almost as long as I had. "Are you changing offices again?" "Something like that, Brenda," I replied, keeping my voice light, unwilling to cause a scene or spread premature rumors. "Just a bit of reorganizing." On the slow elevator ride down, the silence thick with unspoken tension, I found myself standing beside Marcus Thorne, our CEO, the man who'd personally recruited me from Summit Financial Group 11 years ago. He offered a curt nod, his gaze fixed firmly on his smartphone screen, thumbs flying across the glass. He seemed utterly absorbed, perhaps deliberately so. Did he have any real idea what Quentin had just set in motion? Did he grasp the potential fallout for the quarterly projections for the very stability of the company he supposedly led? Maybe not yet, but he would. Soon enough, the market would deliver its verdict. Walking across the parking garage towards my car, the cool air hitting my face, I expected to feel rage, a burning sense of injustice. Instead, a strange, unsettling clarity washed over me. It felt like waking abruptly from a long, comfortable, yet ultimately deceptive dream, only to find the house you thought was yours had never truly belonged to you in the first place. The drive home was silent. No angry calls to Claire, no blaring radio to drown out the thoughts swirling in my head. Just the hum of the engine and the quiet contemplation of what tomorrow might bring. My personal phone buzzed just as I pulled into my driveway, the familiar chime cutting through the silence. A text message. Julian Croft, CEO of Croft Industries, my largest client. $1.7 million in annual business. His contract renewal meeting was scheduled for next week. Dinner confirmed for Thursday. The message read, "Looking forward to discussing the renewal at the usual steakhouse. 8 p.m.? He didn't know. Not yet. No one did, outside that conference room. I placed the phone face down on the granite kitchen counter, not ready to reply, and stared out the window at the familiar suburban street. 11 years. 11 years building trust, relationship by relationship, promise by promise. All built on my word, my reliability, my personal commitment. Quentin Shaw hadn't just terminated an employee today. He'd severed the primary lifeline connecting Nova Financial Solutions to millions of dollars in revenue. And the chilling part? He likely had absolutely no idea of the magnitude of his blunder. I joined NFSBAC when it was still Pioneer Trust and Investment, long before the sleek rebranding and the move to the expensive downtown St. Louis offices. Marcus Thorne hired me himself, poaching me from Summit Financial Group, where I was consistently hitting my numbers but getting repeatedly overlooked for promotion. "I want someone who genuinely knows this market, Nicholas," Marcus had said during that final interview, his gaze direct and earnest back then. "Someone clients don't just respect, but actively trust." For the better part of 11 years, I'd proven his initial trust in me was well placed. I expanded our client base from mostly regional businesses to significant national accounts. I renegotiated standard one-year contracts into more stable 3- and 5-year agreements. I brought in Croft Industries when they were actively being courted by our largest competitor after leaving Summit Financial. I landed Martinez Logistics when everyone else in the industry thought we didn't stand a chance against the established players. Claire, my wife, used to tease me gently, her smile tinged with a hint of resignation. "Thursday night dinner with the Crofts again, Nikki?" she'd ask, already knowing the answer, the familiar pattern etched into our family life. The kids grew accustomed to my absences, missed baseball games, school plays, birthday dinners postponed. Dad's working became their understood reality, the background hum of their childhood. I kept promising them, promising Claire, promising myself, that the sacrifices would be worth it someday, that I was building something lasting, something secure for all of us. 3 promotions, 2 major office expansions, and navigating the company successfully through one brutal recession later, NFS had transformed. It grew from a modest operation into a significant regional player, its revenue streams bolstered significantly by the accounts I managed to roughly $10.5 million of their total business flowed through relationships I personally cultivated and maintained. Not that anyone had bothered to calculate the precise percentage or seemed to care until Quentin arrived with his spreadsheets and his MBA jargon. The first undeniable red flag wasn't the office move or the commission changes. It surfaced during a quarterly review meeting, about 3 months after Quentin took over the sales division. He projected a chart onto the screen, jabbing a laser pointer at a flat line. Your client acquisition rate has flatlined this quarter, Nicholas, he stated, his tone clipped and accusatory. The chart showed I'd only formally signed 2 entirely new small accounts in that period. Because my primary focus has been on expanding and deepening our existing relationships, Quentin, I explained patiently, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. As you know, the Croft Industries contract just doubled in value after months of negotiation. That alone represents significant growth. The future, Nicholas, is a new business, Quentin insisted, dismissing my point with a wave of his hand. Aggressive expansion. We need hunters constantly bringing in fresh kills, not farmers tending the same fields year after year. His analogy hung in the air, crude and dismissive of the loyalty I'd fostered. A week after that meeting, my highly competent executive assistant, Catherine, everyone called her Kate, was abruptly reassigned. No discussion, just an email notification citing realignment of administrative resources. She'd been my right hand for 5 years. The following month, my travel requests, previously rubber-stamped, suddenly required additional layers of approval from Quentin's office. My expense reports, meticulously documented as always, started coming back with nitpicking questions about standard client entertainment costs. Small, insidious steps. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Then came the whispers, filtering through the office grapevine. Whispers about interviews being conducted for new sales talent. Young, eager MBAs, fresh out of school, armed with aggressive, data-driven pitches, but possessing zero real-world industry experience or established relationships. Quentin called them disruptors, a term he seemed particularly fond of. Last month, the whispers solidified into reality. He hired Vanessa Blair, 28 years old, straight from some flashy fintech startup with a dubious track record. During her very first week, with no prior discussion with me, Vanessa was assigned to join my scheduled quarterly review call with Julian Croft. No proper introduction, no clear explanation of her role, just a vague directive from Quentin about showing her the ropes. Julian, sharp as ever, noticed immediately. The call was stilted and awkward, Vanessa interjecting with irrelevant tech jargon while Julian's patience visibly thinned. After we disconnected, my phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Who's the new girl, Nicholas?" Polished, but clueless about manufacturing. "Are you training your replacement on my time?" I'd managed to laugh it off, texting back a deflection. "Just expanding the team, Julian. Trying to get everyone up to speed." But driving home from the office that night, a cold knot tightened in my gut. It was the kind of visceral certainty that comes not from spreadsheets or reports, but from years spent reading the subtle cues in boardrooms, interpreting the micro-expressions on client faces. Something was fundamentally wrong. Deeply wrong. I should have trusted that instinct sooner, acted on it. But I hadn't. I placed the heavy cardboard box firmly on the kitchen counter, the thud echoing slightly in the quiet house. I walked over to the liquor cabinet and poured myself 2 fingers of good bourbon neat. The amber liquid caught the late afternoon light. The house felt unnaturally empty, amplifying the silence. Claire was out of town, spending the week in Phoenix helping her sister with a new baby. It was probably for the best, I admitted to myself. Right now, I needed the quiet, the space to think without having to explain, without seeing the worry in her eyes. I retrieved my personal smartphone, not the company-issued one now sitting uselessly in the box, and scrolled through my contacts. 11 years of carefully cultivated relationships resided here. Over 200 names, clients, crucial vendors, key industry connections, even competitors I respected. People who trusted me implicitly with their business strategies, their financial security. People who had signed multi-million-dollar contracts with Nova Financial Solutions, not because of our corporate marketing campaigns or the admittedly impressive downtown office view, but because of me. Because of Nicholas Vance. My deactivated work phone, Nestled amongst the photos and the mug contained only the official, sanitized correspondence, easily monitored by IT. The real connections, the dinner invitations accepted, the rounds of golf played, the personal cell phone numbers of CEOs and key decision makers, the hard-earned trust, that vital intelligence lived securely here on my personal device. Information accumulated not through corporate mandate, but by consistently being someone people genuinely wanted to work with, someone they relied upon. I took a slow sip of the bourbon, the familiar burn tracing a path down my throat. A strange, almost unnerving calm began to settle over the initial shock. There was no rising panic about the mortgage payment, no immediate desperation about health insurance, though those concerns would surely surface later. Just a stark, clear-eyed understanding of precisely what had happened today, and a growing certainty about what was likely to happen next. The bourbon warmed me, but couldn't entirely dispel the chill of betrayal. 11 years. 11 years of 60-hour work weeks, sacrificing countless family dinners, missing too many little league games and school concerts. 11 years dedicated to building something I genuinely believed was, in part, mine, a legacy of trust and mutual success, only to have the rug pulled out so clinically, so dismissively, only to discover it was never really mine at all. I opened my personal laptop, the sleek metal cool beneath my fingertips, and navigated to my stored employment contract PDF. I scrolled down to the relevant section, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. The non-compete clause was there as expected, but it was specific, limited in scope. A 1-year restriction, explicitly applicable only if I resigned voluntarily. Being terminated without cause, presented euphemistically as an early retirement package I hadn't requested? That changed everything. The language was clear, unambiguous. There was no legal barrier preventing me from taking my expertise, my relationships, elsewhere. My phone buzzed again on the counter. Julian Croft. Another text. Dinner reservation confirmed for Thursday, 8 p.m. at the Gilded Spoon. Looking forward to discussing the renewal in future plans. I stared at the message, the words blurring slightly. Julian Croft. Croft Industries represented $1.7 million in consistent annual business for NFS. He'd been my client for 8 years at NFS, plus 3 years before that when I was at Summit Financial. Nearly 11 years of mutual trust and shared success. A professional relationship that had weathered market downturns and celebrated significant growth. And Julian wasn't an isolated case. There was Leo Martinez of Martinez Logistics, approximately $800,000 annually. Samuel Bellwether of Bellwether Real Estate, another $700,000. Together, just those three represented over $3.2 million in reliable revenue. All three had contract renewals coming up within the next 30 to 60 days. All three dealt exclusively, pointedly through me. They valued the personal connection, the direct accountability. I set my empty bourbon glass down on the counter with a quiet click, the decision solidifying in my mind, sharp and clear. No angry calls tonight. No impulsive, rage-fueled emails sent to Quentin or Marcus that I would later regret. No threats, no demands. That wasn't my style. I would sleep on it. Allow the initial emotional storm to pass. Wake up clear-headed, objective. And then, tomorrow morning, I would make exactly 3 phone calls. Not to vent, not to complain or solicit pity. Just to inform my 3 key clients, Julian, Leo, and Samuel, calmly and professionally, that I was no longer with Nova Financial Solutions, effective immediately. They deserve to hear it directly from me, not through some impersonal corporate announcement or an awkward call from Vanessa Blair. The rest? The fallout, the consequences of Quentin's short-sighted decision? That would happen entirely on its own. The market and the relationships I'd built would take care of that. I carefully took the framed family photos out of the cardboard box, placing them gently on the counter. My daughter, beaming in her graduation cap and gown. My son, looking impossibly grown up on his wedding day last year. The faded picture from that trip to Yellowstone, the one we almost canceled because of a last-minute client emergency I had to handle remotely. A wave of regret washed over me, sharp and poignant. I'd missed too much already, sacrificed too many irreplaceable moments on the altar of career and company loyalty. Loyalty that had just been proven entirely one-sided. Tomorrow, I decided I would start making different choices. Choices prioritizing what truly mattered. I finished the last of the bourbon, rinsed the glass, and headed upstairs to the quiet, empty master bedroom. For the first time in perhaps 11 years, I didn't bother setting an alarm for the pre-dawn hours. No early flights to catch. No quarterly projections to obsessively review before the market opened. Just the calm, cold certainty that Quentin Shaw, in his arrogant pursuit of disruption, had made a catastrophic, company-altering mistake. And ironically, I didn't need to lift another finger. All I had to do was step aside and allow the inevitable consequences to unfold naturally. I made my 3 calls the next morning, just as planned. Kept them brief, professional, devoid of drama. Just the facts. Julian, good morning. I started, my voice calm. I'm calling to let you know personally that as of yesterday, I am no longer with Nova Financial Solutions. I wanted you to hear it directly from me before you received any official notice. His response was instantaneous, sharp with surprise and concern. What? What happened, Nicholas? Are you okay? Who the hell is handling the Croft Industries account now? I imagine Quentin Shaw, the new SVP, will likely reach out, I replied evenly. Or perhaps he'll assign Vanessa Blair. A beat of stunned silence hung on the line, thicker than static. Blair? Julian echoed, his voice laced with incredulity. The girl from the meeting last month? The one asking about blockchain applications for inventory management? She doesn't know the first thing about our business, Nicholas. This is unacceptable. That's really all I can tell you, Julian, I said quietly. The decision regarding your relationship with NF moving forward is entirely yours, of course. Similar conversations followed with Leo Martinez and Samuel Bellwether. The same shock, the same immediate concern about who would manage their accounts, the same implicit understanding that my departure fundamentally changed their relationship with NFS. No suggestions were made about moving their business, no recruitment pitch for a hypothetical future role. Just information, delivered with the same quiet reliability and respect they had come to expect from me over the years. By noon, my personal cell phone was buzzing almost constantly. Text messages, emails, voicemails piling up. Other clients, smaller accounts perhaps, but equally important relationships, had clearly heard the news through the industry grapevine. The financial services world in St. Louis, while competitive, was smaller and more interconnected than executives like Quentin seemed to realize. Word traveled fast, especially news like this. At precisely 2 p.m., my phone screen lit up with a call from Marcus Thorne's direct line. I looked at it for a moment, then deliberately let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. Nikki. The message began using the old, familiar nickname from brighter days, his voice strained, unusually high-pitched. This is Marcus. We need to talk urgently about your transition. Several clients. Julian Croft, Leo Martinez. They're expressing significant concerns. This isn't how we planned. Please, call me back immediately. I didn't return the call. There was nothing productive to discuss, not now. Instead, I drove downtown, navigating the familiar streets towards the offices of Harrison Cole. Harrison was a sharp, seasoned attorney specializing in employment law and corporate litigation. I'd done him a significant favor a few years back, connecting his son-in-law with the right people to secure crucial financing for his now thriving restaurant, the Gilded Spoon. Harrison owed me one, and he was the kind of man who honored his debts. He reviewed my termination papers and the original employment contract swiftly, his expression thoughtful. They can't legally stop you from working in the industry, Nicholas, Harrison confirmed, tapping a finger on the non-compete clause. This early retirement maneuver makes the voluntary resignation trigger null and void. You're a free agent. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. However, he cautioned, his eyes meeting mine, that doesn't mean they won't try to make things difficult. Expect attempts to intimidate your clients, reminders about confidentiality agreements, maybe even veiled threats of legal action to scare them from following you. Be prepared for that pressure campaign. His prediction proved accurate almost immediately. By 4 p.m., an officious email arrived from NFS's legal department, formally reminding me of my ongoing confidentiality obligations regarding proprietary company information. A standard procedure, but the timing felt pointed. By 5 p.m., a text message from Quentin Shaw landed on my phone. "Nicholas, let's connect to discuss your exit package." It read, the tone suddenly conciliatory, almost desperate. There might be significant room for additional consulting work during the transition period. Call me. Too late, Quentin. Far too late for that. The door had been slammed shut, locked, and bolted by him. My phone buzzed yet again at 5:30 p.m. Julian Croft. I answered immediately. "Nicholas," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Just got off a conference call with your former CEO Thorne and that slick VP who apparently fired you, Shaw." They were scrambling, offering apologies and promising seamless continuity. Said Vanessa Blair would personally oversee everything. He paused, taking a breath. Then, believe it or not, they offered me a 10% discount on the contract renewal if I signed today. "What did you tell them, Julian?" I asked quietly, already guessing the answer. "I told them I'd think about it," he replied curtly. "Give them something to sweat over for an hour." I remained silent, letting him continue. Then, Julian went on, a note of grim satisfaction entering his voice. "I had my assistant draft and send formal notice terminating our contract with Nova Financial Solutions, effective immediately. Cited material change in relationship management and loss of confidence as the reason." He confirmed that Leo Martinez and Samuel Bellwether had done precisely the same thing within minutes of his call ending. Still, I said nothing, letting the implications settle. "So, Nicholas," Julian asked, his tone shifting from anger to direct inquiry, "where are you landing? Because wherever you decide to go, that's where Croft Industries' business is going. Just let me know where to send the paperwork." That night, 3 more established companies from my carefully managed portfolio sent similar termination notices to Nova Financial Solutions. By the following morning, the total number of departing clients had reached 8. 8 significant accounts, representing over $3.2 million in lost annual recurring revenue for NFS. And the exodus was likely just beginning. Marcus Thorne, predictably, called an emergency board meeting. I knew this because Kate, my loyal former assistant, sent me a discreet text message from her personal phone later that morning. "Absolute chaos here, Nicholas." The text read, punctuated by urgent exclamation points. "Quentin is frantically trying to blame you for client tampering and breach of contract. Marcus looks like he's seen a ghost, asking everyone why nobody saw this coming." Phones ringing off the hook. Apex Equity Partners just put their due diligence process on indefinite hold. Apex Equity Partners? The name snagged in my memory. Where had I heard that before? Before I could dwell on it, my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize, local area code. "Nicholas Vance," I answered, my voice neutral. "Nicholas, it's Adrian Sterling." The name registered immediately. Adrian Sterling, the dynamic founder and CEO of Sterling Partners, a rapidly growing, highly respected competitor to NFS known for its innovative approach and strong client focus. "Adrian," I replied, surprised by the direct call. "Good to hear from you." "Likewise, Nicholas." Adrian's voice was smooth, confident. "I won't waste your time. I hear through the grapevine that you're potentially available. Several of our mutual friends and clients speak very highly of your work and integrity. I'm listening, Adrian, I said, a flicker of anticipation rising within me. Good. Here's the offer. Senior Vice President position at Sterling Partners. A substantial six-figure signing bonus. Full autonomy to manage your client relationships as you see fit with dedicated support. And, crucially, a seat on our executive committee with equity partnership from day one. It was everything NFS had denied me, everything Quentin had systematically tried to dismantle. Respect, autonomy, recognition, a tangible stake in the success I helped create. When would you ideally want me to start? I asked, the decision already made. Adrian chuckled lightly. How does tomorrow sound, Nicholas? Tomorrow sounds perfect, Adrian. I accepted on the spot. This wasn't a decision born of urgency or desperation. It felt like stepping into a role that was waiting for me, a recognition of the value I brought to the table, value my former employer had foolishly discarded. That afternoon, perhaps sensing the ground shifting irrevocably beneath him, Quentin Shaw texted me again. Nicholas' board just approved a significant retention package, the message pleaded. Full salary continuation for 6 months plus generous stock options. Just help us transition your key accounts smoothly. We need your cooperation. I read the message, a wry smile touching my lips, and then deleted it without responding. There was absolutely nothing left to say. They'd had 11 long years to properly value the relationships I built, the revenue I secured, the loyalty I fostered. Now, facing the consequences of their own actions, they were scrambling to put a desperate, last-minute price tag on it. Too little. Far, far too late. 1 week into my new role at Sterling Partners, settling into a spacious corner office with a better view than I'd ever had at NFS, Kate called me again, this time using a burner phone number. Her voice was low, urgent. Nicholas, you need to know the real reason this happened, she whispered, the sound strained. It wasn't just Quentin wanting to bring in his own people or being threatened by your success. I leaned back in my new leather chair, the scent of possibility replacing the staleness of betrayal, and listened intently as 11 years of my professional history abruptly reshuffled, clicking into a much clearer, colder picture. NFS was planning to sell the firm, Kate explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. Apex Equity Partners, a major private equity firm, had made a formal offer about 2 months ago. But the offer came with significant conditions. Apex wanted to bring in their own designated account managers post-acquisition, particularly for the major, high-revenue clients like Croft, Martinez, and Bellwether. They intended to integrate these key accounts seamlessly into their existing portfolio companies' structures. My strong personal relationships with these clients were seen not as an asset, but as an obstacle. The pieces slammed into place with sickening clarity. Quentin Shaw hadn't been hired merely to boost short-term sales figures or implement trendy management theories. He'd been brought in specifically to systematically dismantle my relationships, to transition my key accounts towards company-controlled processes, making them appear as fungible corporate assets rather than relationships intrinsically tied to a single, trusted executive and me. My termination wasn't about performance metrics or fitting a new corporate culture. It was a calculated, necessary step in preparing Nova Financial Solutions for acquisition by Apex. I was collateral damage in a larger financial game. How? How do you know all this for certain, Kate? I asked, my voice low, struggling to keep the rising anger in check. I'm still technically assigned to the executive suite, supporting Marcus directly now, she explained quickly. I see the documents crossing his desk, overhear the hushed conversations, the panicked conference calls with Apex after the clients started walking. Yesterday afternoon, Apex officially pulled their offer. Their exact words were, the core asset value has been compromised. They won't buy NFS without the stable client base you built, Nicholas. Quentin's move completely backfired. After we hung up, disconnecting the burner call, I sat perfectly still for a long time, The silence in my large office profound. 11 years of unwavering loyalty, dedication, and sacrifice. And they had been willing, no, planning, to surgically detach me from the very clients I had brought in and nurtured, treating me like a mere middleman whose function was complete, easily discarded before the final transaction. Not because I had failed them, but because, in their transactional view of the world, I had succeeded too well. My client relationships were too strong, too personal, too dependent on trust in me. They needed me gone, cleanly severed, before those relationships could be neatly repackaged and sold off as corporate assets to the highest bidder. I slowly opened my new Sterling Partners laptop and checked my email. The inbox was flooded. More former NFS clients, having heard about my move to Sterling, were reaching out, expressing congratulations and inquiring about transitioning their accounts. The industry was buzzing with the news. Nicholas Vance hadn't just left NFS. He'd landed at a major competitor, Sterling Partners, and his most valuable clients were following him in droves. A quick check of a financial news site confirmed NFS stock had plummeted another 12% in just 5 trading days. My phone buzzed with an incoming text message. It was from Marcus Thorne. "Nikki, can we please meet? Just you and me. Off the record. No lawyers." I stared at the message, the request now laden with a nauseating layer of insincerity. The deeper betrayal settled in my stomach like cold, heavy lead. I hadn't just been fired. I had been deliberately, strategically sacrificed as a pawn in a corporate chess game orchestrated by the very man who had once praised my loyalty and client skills. Ignoring Marcus's text for the moment, I picked up my desk phone and dialed Julian Croft's direct line. He answered on the first ring. "Julian, it's Nicholas," I said. "I need to ask you something sensitive." "Anything, Nicholas. What's up?" "In the last few months, say since Quentin Shaw arrived at NFS, did anyone from the firm try to introduce you to individuals representing themselves as potential strategic partners or industry consultants? Perhaps someone connected to a company called Apex Equity Partners?" There was a distinct pause on the other end of the line. "Apex," Julian murmured thoughtfully. "How did you know?" "Yes, actually. During our quarterly review call 2 months ago, Marcus brought in some fellow named Thomas, introduced him as a strategic advisor evaluating market trends in our industry for NFS. He asked a lot of probing questions about Croft Industries, long-term financial needs and integration capabilities. Confirmation. Cold, hard confirmation. They had been actively parading Apex representatives in front of my most important clients, laying the groundwork for a smooth post-acquisition transition, all while I was still employed, still diligently working under the assumption that I was building something of lasting value for NFS, still trusting the leadership. More calls throughout the afternoon revealed the same disturbing pattern. Behind my back, clandestine meetings had been scheduled, sensitive client information gathered, long-standing relationships probed for weaknesses or potential areas where I, their primary contact, might be deemed expendable or easily replaced by an Apex appointee. By the end of the day, I had confirmed that at least 6 of my major accounts had been covertly introduced to Apex Equity Partners representatives, all under the deliberately misleading guise of strategic advisors or industry consultants. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Only then did I finally pick up my phone and text Marcus Thorne back. A simple, direct message. "No meeting necessary, Marcus. I understand the Apex situation completely now." His response came almost instantly, a desperate attempt at damage control. "It was purely a business decision, Nikki. Nothing personal, you have to understand." But it was personal. Deeply, profoundly personal. 11 years of building genuine relationships, of knowing my clients' businesses inside and out, knowing their kids' names, remembering their anniversaries, taking their calls on weekends and holidays when they needed help. All of that dedication, that human connection, had been reduced to a mere impediment on a corporate balance sheet. an obstacle to a lucrative transaction for Marcus and his chosen successor, Quentin. I closed my laptop, shutting out the emails and messages, and looked out the expansive window at the familiar St. Louis skyline. The view felt different from this office, somehow clearer, sharper. Sterling Partners had already formally signed transition contracts with 11 of my former key clients, representing nearly $5 million in secure annual revenue flowing directly away from NFS and onto Sterling's books. And more were contacting me daily, not because I was actively recruiting them, I didn't need to, but because in this relationship-driven business, genuine trust follows trusted people, not just corporate logos or slick marketing campaigns. Nova Financial Solutions hadn't just lost a senior relationship manager, they had fundamentally misunderstood and discarded the very foundation upon which much of their recent growth and stability had been built. And the most damning part? They still didn't seem to fully comprehend why it had all fallen apart so spectacularly. 3 weeks after joining Sterling Partners, feeling more energized and valued than I had in years, I received a formal invitation via email. It was a request to be a panelist at the upcoming prestigious Heartland Investment Summit. The panel topic: Building and Maintaining Client Loyalty in a Transactional Market. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. A wry smile played on my lips. I accepted immediately. Not for ego gratification or mere industry exposure, but because I knew exactly who would be sitting in that audience: respected industry peers, potential new clients for Sterling Partners, and most importantly, the remaining shell-shocked leadership team of Nova Financial Solutions. Marcus Thorne never missed the summit. Neither did the NFS board members who had presumably sanctioned Quentin's disastrous plan. Meanwhile, Sterling Partners was providing me with resources NFS had always claimed were unavailable or unnecessary. 2 dedicated financial analysts assigned solely to support my client portfolio. Significant marketing support to enhance client communication and outreach. And most crucially, the tangible reality of equity partnership. Every new client I brought on board, every existing relationship I strengthened, wasn't just generating commission. It was actively building something I partially owned, a shared success story. I spent the next month meticulously preparing for the conference panel. Not crafting flashy PowerPoint slides filled with empty platitudes or rehearsing carefully scripted anecdotes. Instead, working late nights with my 2 sharp analysts, I compiled hard, verifiable data. We tracked the performance metrics for every single client who had made the transition from NFS to Sterling Partners alongside me. The results were compelling, undeniable. Average service response times reduced by a staggering 53%. Client implementation costs for new services down by an average of 30%. Client satisfaction scores, measured through independent surveys, up by an average of 22 points across the board. This wasn't just about vindicating myself. It was about presenting irrefutable proof of what happens when a financial services firm genuinely prioritizes and invests in strong client relationships over short-term, transactional thinking. Morning of the Heartland Investment Summit arrived, crisp and clear. I reviewed my concise notes one last time in my hotel room. No dramatic reveals planned, no naming names or public shaming. Just the cold, hard facts and the resulting positive outcomes. Professional, measured, devastatingly effective. As I walked into the main hotel ballroom, scanning the gathering crowd, I spotted Marcus Thorne almost immediately. He was huddled near the coffee station with 2 grim-faced NFS board members I recognized. His face visibly tightened, aging years in an instant, when our eyes met across the bustling room. I offered a brief, polite nod, the professional courtesy of a victor, and moved on towards the stage. The panel discussion began predictably enough, with standard questions about emerging market trends, regulatory changes, and the impact of technological disruption in the financial sector. When the moderator finally turned to me, I spoke plainly, my voice calm and steady, resonating clearly through the microphone. In an age where virtually everything can be automated, digitized, and commoditized, I began, making eye contact with various members of the audience. True personal accountability and genuine human connection have become the rarest, and therefore the most valuable commodities in our industry. I let that sink in for a moment. Companies often make the critical mistake, I continued, of viewing long-term client relationships as tangible company assets that can be easily transferred or reassigned on a spreadsheet. They fundamentally are not. These relationships are intricate trust agreements built over time between individuals, agreements that require constant nurturing, mutual respect, and unwavering reinforcement. Then, I presented my data case study by anonymized case study. Charts showing the dramatic improvements in service delivery, cost efficiency, and overall satisfaction experienced by clients who had recently switched firms that prioritized relationship management. I never mentioned Nova Financial Solutions by name. I didn't need to. The implication was crystal clear to everyone in that room who knew the recent industry upheavals. The crucial lesson here isn't about crafting better retention packages or enforcing stricter contractual obligations, I concluded, my gaze sweeping across the audience and briefly locking with Marcus Thorne's pained expression. It's about fundamentally understanding that when you treat your experienced relationship managers, the very people who embody the client's trust in your firm, as interchangeable parts in a corporate machine, your clients will eventually show you exactly how flawed and how costly that transactional assumption truly is. During the Q&A session that followed, a hand shot up in the front row. A young, eager analyst I didn't recognize posed the question that was undoubtedly on everyone's mind. "Mr. Vance," he asked, his voice amplified slightly by a nearby microphone, "isn't your own recent, high-profile move from Nova Financial Solutions to Sterling Partners, along with the subsequent departure of several major NFS clients who followed you, exactly the kind of key person risk scenario that companies legitimately fear when they consider granting significant autonomy to their top relationship managers?" A hush fell over the large ballroom. All eyes turned to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I could feel Marcus Thorne's intense, conflicted gaze boring into me from across the room. "That's a perfectly fair and important question," I replied smoothly, meeting the analyst's gaze directly. "But I'd encourage you to consider the alternative perspective. NFS or any company finding itself in a similar situation didn't lose those valuable clients simply because I, as an individual, decided to leave. They lost those clients because the company's leadership fundamentally failed to understand, or perhaps ceased to value, what those specific clients actually prioritized in their financial services partner." I paused, allowing the weight of the statement to settle. No client followed me purely out of personal loyalty, as flattering as that notion might be, I continued. They followed because their complex business needs were consistently better understood, anticipated, and met through my particular approach to proactive service and strategic partnership, an approach my former employer explicitly decided was no longer aligned with their new direction. I paused again, deliberately making brief, direct eye contact with Marcus Thorne, holding it for just a beat longer than necessary. "Every company certainly has the right to change its strategic direction," I finished, my tone firm but reasonable. "And, consequently, every client retains the absolute right to decide whether that new direction truly serves their best interests. The free market, in that sense, is brutally efficient and ultimately unforgiving." After the panel concluded, as I stepped down from the stage, 3 more senior executives from companies that had previously been solid NFS clients approached me, extending their hands and business cards. By the end of the conference that afternoon, Sterling Partners had signed firm letters of intent with 5 significant new accounts, representing another $2.7 million in projected annual revenue, plucked directly from the wreckage of NFS's client base. That evening, back in the quiet of my hotel room, I checked the financial news wires on my laptop. A major press release had just crossed the virtual tape. Nova Financial Solutions announces corporate restructuring initiative. Deep within the text, buried several paragraphs down, was the inevitable confirmation. Quentin Shaw was pursuing other opportunities, effective immediately. The much-anticipated Apex Equity Partners acquisition was officially, unequivocally dead. NFS stock had fallen another steep 8% on the news. I closed my laptop slowly, feeling not a surge of satisfaction or vindictive triumph, but rather the quiet, profound certainty that comes from being proven unequivocally right, not by argument or rhetoric, but by the cold, hard, impartial judgment of the market itself. The lesson had been delivered publicly and painfully. Whether Marcus Thorne and the remaining NFS board would truly learn from it was no longer my concern. My focus was now entirely on building something better, something sustainable, at Sterling Partners. 6 months after my unceremonious termination from NFS, I stood in Sterling Partners' largest, most impressive conference room. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the vibrant St. Louis cityscape. The room was filled with my rapidly growing team analysts, support staff, and the 3 new, experienced relationship managers I'd recently hired along with the firm's senior leadership. On the large screen behind me, a single, impactful slide displayed our team's latest quarterly results. $8.4 million in new business booked, a remarkable 70% of which came directly from former Nova Financial Solutions clients who had chosen to place their trust in Sterling Partners, and in me. Adrian Sterling himself, beaming, raised a glass of champagne. "A toast," he declared, his voice ringing with genuine enthusiasm, "to Nicholas Vance and his outstanding team, and to the single best strategic acquisition Sterling Partners has ever made, and the beauty is, we didn't even have to buy a company to get it." Polite, appreciative laughter rippled through the assembled group. I smiled, acknowledging the compliment, but didn't join in the celebratory toast itself. For me, this moment wasn't primarily about celebration. It was about profound validation. Validation of my approach, validation of the relationships I'd nurtured, validation of the principle that trust, in the end, is the ultimate currency. As if on cue, my phone vibrated silently in my pocket with a news alert notification. I discreetly glanced at the screen. Nova Financial Solutions Corp announces he'll transition. Marcus Thorne steps down amid continued revenue challenges and failed acquisition attempt. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without comment, without showing anyone. Some victories are quiet ones, requiring no audience, no applause. Their significance lies within. Later that afternoon, back in my office, an email landed in my inbox. The sender, Vanessa Blair, the ambitious young woman Quentin Shaw had tried and failed to position as my replacement. "Mr. Vance," the email began tentatively, "I'm not sure if you remember me, but I wanted to reach out. I've been let go from NFS along with most of the remaining sales team as part of the restructuring. I was wondering if Sterling Partners might possibly be hiring." I read her message, feeling a pang of sympathy rather than resentment. She had been a pawn too in Quentin's reckless game. I forwarded her email directly to Sterling's head of HR with a brief note attached. "Worth interviewing. Talented. Caught in a bad situation. Not her fault what happened at NFS." As I was packing up my briefcase to leave for the day, my executive assistant handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope that had just arrived via courier. No corporate logo, just my name handwritten on the front in familiar script. Inside, I found a single sheet of heavy bond paper containing a handwritten note from Marcus Thorne. "Nikki," it began, the handwriting slightly unsteady. "You were right. About everything. I prioritized a transaction over relationships, strategy over loyalty, and in doing so, I cost the company, and myself, almost everything that mattered. If you are ever willing to have coffee, just talk. I would deeply appreciate the chance to apologize properly in person." I folded the note carefully and placed it inside my jacket pocket. Maybe someday, when the time felt right. But not yet. That evening, Driving home along the familiar route, I passed the gleaming downtown building that housed Nova Financial Solutions headquarters, or rather, what used to be their headquarters. Workers on scaffolding were physically removing the large, illuminated Nova Financial Solutions sign from the building's facade. The local business journal had reported earlier that week that NFS was drastically downsizing, relocating to a much smaller, less prestigious office space in the suburbs, a visible symbol of their decline. I didn't slow down, didn't pause to take a picture or savor the moment. I just kept driving, eyes fixed firmly forward, heading towards the life I was consciously, deliberately building now on my own terms, guided by my own values. 1 year to the day after Quentin Shaw had slid those termination papers across the polished conference table, I sat in Adrian Sterling's office, a similar polished table between us. This time, however, the documents I was signing weren't severance papers. They were the final partnership documents, cementing my status as a full equity partner at Sterling Partners. The firm had experienced unprecedented growth over the past 12 months, expanding its client base by 34%, largely driven by the accounts and the team I had brought on board. My personal client portfolio now represented nearly $20 million in stable, profitable annual revenue for the firm. I closed the heavy manila folder containing the signed partnership agreement and looked out my own office window, the expansive view of the St. Louis skyline now feeling like a symbol of achieved potential, not lost dreams. The city was the same, the buildings unchanged, but for me, everything else had fundamentally shifted. Claire walked in, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee, her smile warm and genuine. "Signed, sealed, and official now, partner?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with pride. I nodded, returning her smile, a deep sense of peace settling over me. "Signed and official." She sat down in the chair across from my desk, studying my face intently. "You don't look quite as jubilant as I expected you to be," she observed softly. "Still thinking? About NFS? About Marcus?" I shook my head, taking a slow sip of the coffee. "It wasn't about them anymore." "No," I said truthfully. "Not really. I was just thinking about what we're building here, Claire. About ensuring we do it right this time, for everyone involved." That very morning, in my new capacity as partner, I had officially approved the hiring of 3 new senior account managers. Crucially, they were all being brought in under the same transparent, performance-based profit-sharing structure I had negotiated for myself upon joining. No one at Sterling Partners would pour their heart and soul into building something significant, only to risk having it arbitrarily taken away by short-sighted management decisions or hidden corporate agendas. That was my first official act as a partner, a commitment to a different way of doing business. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Julian Croft. "Just heard the news about the partnership, Nicholas. Congratulations. Never had a doubt you'd land firmly on your feet." I smiled and typed back a quick reply. "Thanks, Julian. Couldn't have done it without the trust of clients like you." His response came back instantly. "No, Nicholas," he corrected firmly. "Thanks to you being exactly who you are. We didn't follow a company. We just followed the value, followed the trust. Simple as that." After we hung up, my gaze fell upon a small, elegant frame on my credenza. A gift from Claire last Christmas. Inside, a simple quote inscribed on parchment paper. "The best revenge is massive success." I picked it up, looked at it for a moment, then gently placed it back on the credenza, face down. That chapter, the chapter defined by hurt and the need for vindication, was definitively closed. I opened my digital calendar and booked a tentative lunch meeting with Marcus Thorne for the following week. Not to gloat, not to rehash the painful past, certainly not to rub salt in his wounds, but because sometimes the final necessary step in truly moving forward is releasing the heavy weight of what came before, finding a measure of closure, perhaps even offering a quiet form of grace. I shut down my computer, picked up my keys, and walked out of the office to meet Claire downstairs. We had tickets to our son Alex's band performance tonight at a local club, the kind of event I almost certainly would have missed, pleading client demands in my previous life at NFS. Some losses, I realized with growing certainty, truly do clear the path for better, more meaningful victories. Some fires, however painful, serve to burn away only what genuinely needed to go, leaving behind stronger foundations. Driving away from the city lights towards the music venue, with Claire beside me, I had never been more certain of that simple, hard-won truth than I was today.